The first sheet we're going to fill in today is actually called Doodle Notes. Doodle Notes have open spaces in the notes so that you can fill in and color in the shapes as you learn about the material. First thing you need to know about exponents is when you learned about multiplication, you probably represented multiplication using repeated addition. Basic exponent operations can be represented by repeated multiplication. So the first thing you need to fill in with your note sheet is this right here, multiplication. And then we're going to move over to this side of the page. Notice how it's shaded in. You can do the same. When you have an exponent, you have a large number or letter, which is referred to as the base. The smaller number or letter, which is located up to the upper right, is called the exponent. This means that the b, the base, is multiplied by itself n different times. Please be sure you filled in exponent, base, and again, you can do some coloring in to doodle on these notes. You should also fill in multiplied by itself up here. Some examples of how exponents can be utilized are right here. 4 to the third power gives us a base of 4 and an exponent of 3. And again, what it means is we're going to take our base, 4, and we're going to repeatedly multiply it this many times, 3 times. So 4 times 4 is 16, times the last 4 gives us an answer of 64. The next example is 1 to the 5th power. This means the base 1 will be multiplied against itself 5 different times because our exponent is 5. 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 still gives us 1. For the last example printed on your sheet, we are going to take 3 to the 2nd power. Sometimes when we say a number is raised to the power of 2, we say it's been squared. So we could also read this 3 squared. It means we're going to take 3 and multiply by itself one more time. So there's 2 separate factors. 3 times 3 gives us 9. There's another special word that we often use when we're talking about a power of 3. That word is cubed. Fill in squared and cubed on your note sheet. This is an example of cubed up here. 4 to the third power could also be called 4 cubed. It means, again, that you're multiplying it by itself 3 times. Here's a space where you can enter another example. If we have to calculate 7 cubed, you would take 7 to the third power, and you would multiply 7 times 7 times 7 to give you the answer of 343. Now, in your notebook, that small sheet of paper leaves you with room at the bottom on your lined paper. Here's some examples to add to your notebook so that you have more examples to refer to. The first one, 2 to the 4th power. This means our base is 2 and we're raising it to the 4th power, which allows us to take 4 separate numbers. We're taking 2 to the 4th power, so 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and again that gives you 16. The next example is 9 squared. This means we're taking the base 9 and raising it to the 2nd power, which means 9 times 9 or 81. If we want to take -1 and cube it, we would take -1. We would want to put parentheses around this number to include the negative sign in our math, and we are going to multiply it by itself 3 times. So -1 to the third power looks like this. -1 times -1 times -1. It does end up with a negative answer because your first 2 powers multiply to be +1, and then that answer, +1 times -1, gives you a negative answer. Here's another negative number. -6 to the third power would give you -6. Again, we use parentheses to organize our work. To the third power, again, means we have 3 separate factors of that base, -6. And if you multiply that out, you get -216. Now, one other piece of information that's helpful to know is some of your work on the calculator will be used to work on exponents. So for example, if you have to take 5 and square it, we know we could press 5 times 5 and then hit the equals button. We also need to know that there's a button that allows us to square any number that we wish to square. This would be this button right here. So if you were to calculate 5 squared, you would put in 5 and then you would press this button. This would give you your answer of 25. There's another button to be aware of, and we call this the caret button. We press this button when we want to raise our number to any other exponent. It'll work for squaring, but usually we would use this if we want to raise it to a power that's higher than 2. So for example, if we were to calculate 16 to the 4th power, we would ordinarily have to type in 16 times 16 times 16 times 16, and it takes a long time. So using this caret button looks like this when you type it in the calculator. This tells the calculator you want to take 16 and you want to raise it to the 4th power. 16 to the 4th power does give you the answer of 65,536. Try it on your calculator to be sure that that's the answer you get. Now what I'd like you to do is take a look at the other note sheet that you have. This note sheet is also a doodle note sheet, and what you want to do is go through the questions and try them with your calculator if you wish. You're going to raise 2 to the 5th power, you're going to raise 5 to the 3rd power, you're going to raise 10 to the 3rd power. There's a couple more examples here. Pause the video and we'll come back and check our work together. Okay, to make sure that your note sheet is correct, we can verify that 2 to the 5th power is 32. Remember, instead of multiplying this in your calculator like this, you could hit 2 caret 5 and get your answer 32. 5 to the 3rd power, you could hit 5 caret 3 and get 125. And 10 to the 3rd power, you could also use 10 caret 3 and get 1,000. 12 to the 1st power just means we're taking the base 12 and we're just multiplying it, or actually not even multiplying it, it's just 12. There's one factor of 12, so it's 12. 10 to the 5th power gives you 100,000, and 10 to the 13th power is going to give you this huge number. It's going to have 13 zeros, and it's going to have a 1 in front of it. And there's these little reminders on this side of the note sheet. Powers of 10 will only contain 1s and 0s. Any number to the 1st power is itself, just like we had here in our example. 12 to the 1st power is 12. And at the top, any number to the 0 power is 1. We're going to come back to special exponents like 0, and we're even going to learn about negative exponents later in the year. The one thing I do need you to be aware is on the bottom of your sheet. The base is only what's directly in front of the power. In order for a negative symbol to be included, it must be grouped with parentheses. That's what we did on the other sheet. This is what it looks like if your negative number is not contained in parentheses. It means we have a -1 separate from the 2 that is being raised to the 4th power. So you almost want to look at that as a -1 outside multiplied against the 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. This does give you a -16 answer. And here's an example where the negative symbol is part of the base like we did on the other side. We have a -2, it's in the parentheses, which means we will take the -2 times itself 4 different times. Notice the answer will come out positive instead of negative. Your calculator needs the parentheses around the number if you want the -2 to be raised to the 4th power. If you don't include the parentheses, the calculator will give you the answer -16 because it is programmed to do these two problems correctly, with parentheses and without. So now what you need to do is you need to tape these into your notebook